All right, Judge, all courtrooms are clear. We can proceed.
Great. Well, welcome everybody. As I said, I'm Judge Lindsay. Are both sides, Team Fiji and Team Greece, ready for trial?
Team Fiji is ready, Your Honor.
Thank you.
Team Greece is ready, Your Honor.
Thank you. All right. If there are video recorders present and being used, both teams, have you approved of the taping of the round? I'm not sure who is or isn't doing that.
Sorry, that was me. We should be clear now.
Okay, great. All right. The Colorado Bar Association may be taking photographs or videotaping any of these rounds. The team participation in the state tournament grants automatic permission and use of these photos by the Colorado Bar Association. There are no recesses allowed. I want to remind everybody about that. There are exceptions, obviously, for health emergencies. So just be aware of that we will just be proceeding right on through the trial. Does any scoring panelist have any biases that they're aware of? You've cleared conflicts already. Are you all ready to go? All right, scoring panelists can go ahead and turn off their cameras. Any disputes for teams and coaches that arise out of this competition must be reported in accordance with the competition rules. Your compliance with the rules and time requirements will be considered in scoring your individual performances. I want to confirm that no coach or team member is present. All right, and if I could ask each side to introduce your team members. Let's start with Team Fiji.
Good afternoon, Your Honor, opposing counsel, and members of the jury. My name is Tessa Awald, and I will be conducting the direct examination of Avery Becker and the cross-examination of Kyle Kuzak.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Your Honor, opposing counsel, and members of the jury. My name is Leah Farrell, and today I will be conducting the closing statement on behalf of the defendant, the direct examination of Taylor Perkins, and the cross-examination of Detective Jordan Markowitz.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Your Honor, opposing counsel, members of the jury. My name is Elena Medina, and I will be conducting the direct examination of Blake Van Owen, the cross-examination of Alex Cifuentes, and delivering the opening statement on behalf of the defense. At this time, may your witnesses please introduce themselves?
That would be wonderful. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Your Honor, and members of the jury. My name is Sahidi Balaji, and today I am Avery Becker.
Hello, Your Honor, and members of the jury. I'm Cedric Eisbert, and I'm Taylor Perkins.
Hello, Your Honor, members of the jury. My name is Kayla Anderson, and today I am Blake Van Owen.
Your Honor, this concludes introductions for Team Fiji.
Very well, thank you. Team Greece.
Good evening, Your Honor, opposing counsel, and ladies and gentlemen of the jury. My name is Emma Klausner, and today I will be performing the direct examination of Detective Jordan Markowitz and the cross-examination of Taylor Perkins.
Thank you.
Good evening, Your Honor, opposing counsel, and ladies and gentlemen of the jury. My name is Laura Thompson, and today I'll be performing the direct examination of Kyle Kuzak, the cross-examination of Blake Van Owen, as well as the opening arguments.
Good evening, Your Honor, opposing counsel, and ladies and gentlemen of the jury. My name is Raven Chamberlain, and today I will be performing the direct examination of Alex Cifuentes, as well as the cross-examination of Avery Becker, as well as the closing arguments. May our witnesses please introduce themselves?
Yes, please. Thank you.
Good evening, Your Honor, and ladies and gentlemen of the jury. My name is Abby Miller, and I will be playing the role of Detective Jordan Markowitz this evening.
Thank you.
Good evening, Your Honor, and ladies and gentlemen of the jury. My name is Rachel Yett, and today I'll be playing the role of Kyle Kuzak.
Thank you.
Good evening, Your Honor, and members of the jury. My name is Shanti Grossman, and today I'll be playing.
Thank you.
Good evening, Your Honor, and members of the jury. My name is Reham Abdunabi, and I will be the timekeeper for today.
Thank you. Does that complete Team Grease?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right, thank you. At this time, I'm going to swear in all of the members in the courtroom. In an effort to maintain a level of professionalism and to uphold the code of ethical conduct during and after these mock trial proceedings, all members of the gallery, scoring panels, and teams shall stand for the swearing in to the oath of the code of ethical conduct. Team members, please raise your right hands. Do you promise that the presentation you are about to give will faithfully and truthfully conform to the facts and rules of the mock trial competition? Okay. Witnesses, do you promise that the testimony you are about to give will fully, faithfully, and truthfully conform to your conform to your witness statements, that you will not add material facts or opinions which are not contained in the case problem, and that you will follow the rules and procedures of the mock trial competition? Thank you. And gallery members, including teacher and attorney coaches, family members, and friends, please raise your right hands. Do you promise to represent yourselves as positive role models and to behave in a manner that exemplifies ethical and professional sportsmanship during and after this mock trial round? We're going to assume that they all do. And lastly, scoring panelists, do you promise to adjudicate the mock trial competition as fairly and objectively as possible in accordance with the facts, procedures, and rules of the mock trial competition? And I'm going to assume that they do. Thank you. Thanks. All right. Are the teams ready to proceed to trial?
My apologies, Your Honor. I believe that our timekeeper got kicked out of the room. If we could just wait a minute or two to see if she could get back in.
Certainly.
If it was Matea, she has returned.
All right. Yes, that's her. Thank you so much.
Okay. And I'm sorry, I don't have a score sheet or anything. Who's our prosecutor today? Our prosecution team?
Your Honor, Grease is the prosecution.
Okay, thank you. Let's begin. Do we have opening statements?
Yes, Your Honor, but we have a few preliminary matters.
Oh, thank you.
Your Honor, the prosecution would like to inquire into the court's preference on screen sharing and when to do so.
I'm fine if you want to present evidence through screen sharing. I think as you're trying to admit it or as you're discussing it, I assume you're going to use the exhibit with your witness first, discuss it, and then move to admit.
We'd also like to ask if recrosses and directs will be allowed.
Briefly.
We'd like to ensure that every juror has a copy of stipulated facts as well as jury instructions. And lastly, we'd like to explain that our team is all competing from the same school, and so in between the exchange of witnesses, we may have a slight delay for sanitation purposes, and we apologize in advance.
Thank you for letting the court know. Team Fiji, any other?
Yes, Your Honor. The defense requests that due to the virtual setting, lawyers may remain sitting for direct and cross-examinations as well as objections.
Granted.
On sustained objections, would you like us to request that testimony is stricken from the record, or should we assume that testimony has already been stricken?
You can assume that it's been stricken.
All right, and Your Honor, we would ask that timekeepers be allowed to stop time in the event of technical difficulties.
Granted.
No further preliminary matters, Your Honor.
All right, thank you. Anything else from either team before we start?
No, Your Honor.
Great. All right, let's get going. Opening statement.
Are timekeepers ready?
Whenever you're ready.
And from Team Fiji?
Yes.
Good evening, Your Honor, opposing counsel, and ladies and gentlemen of the jury. Get out, get in, get even. Today you will hear the story of Mackenzie Brackman. Mackenzie Brackman is a beloved defense attorney. He worked day in and day out tirelessly to help his clients that usually wouldn't get a second chance. With his limited free time, he donated that time to a high school mock trial team. He was the coach for the CHS mock trial team. Some of the kids on his team were Alex Cifuentes, Taylor Perkins, and Avery Becker. Alex Cifuentes respected Mr. Brackman. They saw how hard he worked and how much he cared about the team. Taylor Perkins never had a problem with Mr. Brackman, and they wouldn't get into any arguments. But Avery Becker constantly disrespected Mr. Brackman. They would always get into arguments with him and would think that they were a better attorney than him. During one of their very heated arguments, Avery Becker decided to disrespect Mr. Brackman in front of the whole entire team. So Mr. Brackman had finally had enough. He said, "Get out. Get out of practice and get out of my life." So Avery Becker became impulsive and angry. They took a permanent marker and went to Mr. Brackman's 911 Porsche. They wrote "Worst Attorney Award" across the hood, all 18 letters. And of course, afterwards, they felt terrible about it, but this proves that Avery Becker, the defendant, is able to act on their impulses. On March 6, 2020, Mr. Brackman found himself home alone. An intruder matching the height and build of Avery Becker got into his house. Once they got into his residence, they trashed his house, which later resulted in the murder of Mr. Brackman. He was stabbed in his shoulder and left to bleed out. Today, the prosecution will present you with 3 witnesses. We'll call Detective Jordan Markowitz, Kyle Kuzak, and Alex Cifuentes. Detective Jordan Markowitz and Kyle Kuzak will explain to you, with their years of experience, how an intruder matching the height and build of Avery Becker got into Mr. Brackman's house. They'll explain this to you through ring videos. Then you'll hear from Alex Cifuentes, a teammate of Avery Becker and Taylor Perkins. They'll tell you how bad the relationship was between them and Mr. Brackman, and how Avery and Mr. Brackman fought so much that it didn't only cause the stress on the two of them, but the team as a whole. They'll also present you with text messages, where Avery Becker said, not long before the murder, that they would get into Mr. Brackman's house and that they would get even. The defense will also call 3 witnesses. They'll call Blake Van Owen, Taylor Perkins, and Avery Becker. Blake Van Owen, with his limited experience, will try and tell you that there are holes in our case. But as you'll hear from their theories, he has no evidence that Avery Becker did not commit this crime. Then you'll hear from Taylor Perkins. Taylor Perkins will try and tell you that the relationship between them and Mr. Brackman wasn't that bad. But as you'll hear from Alex Cifuentes, they constantly argued. Taylor is also best friends with the defendant, Avery Becker. That makes their whole testimony biased. Lastly, you'll hear from the defendant, Avery Becker. Avery Becker will try and portray the relationship between them and Mr. Brackman as not that bad. But as you'll hear from the constant arguments and the vandalism done to Mr. Brackman's car, they constantly argued, and Avery Becker did not like Mr. Brackman. Today, as you hear the prosecution's case, you'll hear 3 things to be true. That Avery Becker was told to get out of practice. That Avery Becker got into Mr. Brackman's house on March 6th, and Avery Becker got even. Today, the prosecution has the burden of proof. That means we must prove to you beyond a reasonable doubt that Avery Becker is guilty. As you hear the prosecution's case, you'll realize that there is no burden. There is just proof that Avery Becker was told to get out. Avery Becker got in, and Avery Becker got even. The prosecution asks you to find Avery Becker guilty on all accounts. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Thompson. Team Fiji.
Yes, Your Honor. Before I begin, for clarification purpose, can the court all hear and see me clearly? Thank you. May it please the court, counsel, and members of the jury. Today's story is centered around a sloppy investigation, selective evidence, and a circumstantial case. Now, Ms. Thompson has attempted to paint the narrative of a robbery gone wrong and of a girl gone mad. But when we take a closer look, we will find that the prosecution had decided who was guilty before the investigation had even begun. The witnesses of the prosecution failed to follow through on the multiple possibilities of this case, pinning the blame on a vulnerable girl instead of giving a man justice. Today, you will hear from Avery Becker, a young girl being wrongfully accused of murdering her mock trial coach. Avery is a natural-born leader who uses her skills to her advantage. She excelled in mock trial and brought her team great lengths. Unfortunately, her team didn't always see eye to eye with her, which resulted in some tensions between members as well as her coach. But that kind of tension was a result of teen frustration, as we can all recall a teacher or classmate that we never seemed to get along with. That kind of teen angst is nowhere near enough to drive someone to murder, especially someone with so much potential like Avery. Despite this, some of them are now trying to pin the blame of this tragic murder on her due to the petty drama of a high school club. Today, Avery will tell you about the course of events leading up to Mr. Brackman's murder, her relationships with those in the team, as well as her story, and how she is not the one to blame for this tragedy. You will also hear from Taylor Perkins, a close friend of Avery's and a member of the mock trial team as well. Taylor was a part of the mock trial team as a fun way to pass the time, like many other kids his age. He was often around the team and saw how relationships progressed as time went on, as well as how they could affect the case today. Today, he will tell you his perspective about this case, any information he has to bring his coach justice, as well as both his and Avery's placement during the course of events. He will tell you that both he and Avery were together, searching for Avery's lost phone the entire day of the murder, meaning that there's no way Avery could have committed this crime. However, if that's not enough for you, the prosecution's very own Detective Jordan Markowitz will prove this to you through their cell tower investigation, further showing that the prosecution's claim has nothing to fall back on. The prosecution has tried to tell you that all evidence points to Avery Becker, and this is simply not the case. You will hear from Professor Blake Van Owen, a private investigator and expert witness in police practices, forensic evidence, and crime scene reconstruction. Today, she will show you through her investigative work that not only does the prosecution's investigation have flaws beyond conclusion, but how the only way they could have come to this conclusion is through their own clouded judgment and assumptions. Their evidence doesn't point to any specific person at all, let alone the defendant. In today's trial, she will show you the rushed nature of the investigation, as well as how the prosecution failed to look into other possibilities of this case, such as Blair Rollins, whose father had sworn revenge against Brackman before going to jail, who was not in school at the time of the murder, and who has disappeared without a trace since the murder. But did the prosecution look into this very alarming lead? Not at all. Professor Van Owen will show that the prosecution focused on Avery Becker with absolute tunnel vision, blinded to investigating other possible suspects and blinded to answering other obvious questions. Was this an unknown burglar who acted rashly? They don't know. Did Alex Cifuentes, the person who resented Avery the most for her success, set her up to take the fall? They don't know. Or did Blair Rollins need cover for revenge? They don't know. So many possibilities, and yet only one of them even explored. Today, the burden of proof has been placed upon the prosecution, and they will not be able to prove anything to you, because the evidence will show that they had failed to find the true culprit of Mr. Brackman's murder. The investigation was sloppy, the evidence is selective, and the case is circumstantial. The prosecution had many chances to bring Mr. Brethman justice, and instead, they are now willing to send one of his best students to jail for a crime she did not commit, just so they can have an easy way out. One life has already been taken from the Colorado community, and we cannot allow the prosecution to so carelessly take away another. And so at the end of this trial, we ask that you rule in favor of the defendant and declare Avery Becker not guilty. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Medina. Team Grease, call your first witness.
The prosecution calls Detective Jordan Markowitz to the stand. Good evening, Detective.
Good evening.
Could you please state your first and last name, spelling the last for the record?
My name is Jordan Markowitz. Markowitz is spelled Markowitz.
What's your current occupation?
I am currently a homicide detective.
Who are you employed with?
The Denver Police Department.
How long have you been working with them?
13 years in total now, but 7 years specifically as a homicide detective.
So, Detective, as a homicide investigator, what exactly is it that you do?
As a homicide investigator or detective, I am called to the scenes of reported homicides. Frequently, when these crimes occur, uniformed officers along with paramedics will arrive at the scene, secure it, and then call me. When I arrive, I look at the evidence that is present at the scene and as well start to put some of the pieces together using such evidence.
Do you work in any other other fields of expertise that help you to understand investigation?
Not necessarily other fields, but specifically within my field of detective work, I am certified in cell phone technology and forensic data recovery.
Could you explain what that is exactly?
Yes, cell phone technology is the science behind how your cell phone works, especially as it communicates with cell towers. So imagine you're sending a text or making a call. Your phone will typically make a connection and have a sort of communication with the cell tower, typically that's nearest to it. This communication is recorded onto a report called a call detail record or a CDR. And these records can then be used through that forensic data recovery side in forensic and police work.
Does this knowledge help you to better understand investigative cases?
It does. Yes, absolutely.
Do you believe it helps others to understand them as well?
I do, yes. A lot of this work is quite complicated, especially those CDRs that we discussed earlier are quite complicated if you don't know what you're looking for. And so I believe, even specifically in this case, my knowledge is helpful in aiding juries.
Detective, at this time, the prosecution moves to admit Detective Jordan Markowitz as an expert witness in cell phone data analysis and crime scene investigation.
Ms. Farrell?
No objections, Your Honor.
Okay. Detective Markowitz will be admitted as an expert in crime scene investigation, cell phone technology, and was there one other area? Is that it?
No, just cell data analysis.
Cell data analysis. All right, thank you. Proceed.
Detective, I'd like to shift our attention to the date of March 6th, 2020. Is there anything significant to you about that date?
There is. On March 6, 2020, I was called to the scene of a reported homicide at the address of 444 South Flower Street.
What state was that address in?
Colorado.
And what was the county?
Denver County.
What kind of building was 444 South Flower Street?
It was a residence or a dwelling. Someone lived there.
So, Detective, upon initial investigation, upon your arrival, what were the first things that you noticed?
When I first arrived at the scene, I noticed not only a body present, but a large chef's knife near the body.
Were photos taken of these things?
Yes, both of them.
Would you recognize the pictures today?
I would.
Let the record reflect that I'm going to screen share exhibits 3 and 5. First, looking at exhibit 3, Detective. Do you recognize this photo?
I do, yes.
What is it?
It is of the body that I found present at the scene of 444 South Flower Street on March 6th.
Is this a clear and accurate depiction of that body?
It is, yes.
And looking at exhibit 5, what is this photo here?
Exhibit 5 is a photo of the large knife that I detailed earlier laying near the body that was found at the scene, excuse me.
Do you recognize this picture as an accurate depiction of that knife?
I do, yes. This is exactly as the knife appeared at the scene.
Your Honor, the prosecution moves to admit exhibits 3 and 5 into evidence.
Is it Farrell or Farrell? I want to make sure I'm pronouncing Farrell. Ms. Farrell, any objection?
Yes, Your Honor. The defense objects to the inclusion of both of these exhibits under Rule 403.
Okay. Can you give me a little bit more of an explanation under how does it not meet Rule 403?
All right. These photographs must be excluded because their probative value is substantially outweighed by a danger of unfair prejudice. In this case, the pictures are more prejudicial than probative because they are likely to inflame the passions of the jury. These pictures will do nothing to inform the jury as to the identity of the killer. In addition, testimony of the expert on stand should be sufficient to demonstrate relevant facts to the jury. In regards to Exhibit 5, the picture of the knife has no orienting features to indicate where it was in the house, how close to the victim, or any other relevant information. In addition, counsel has given no indication what testimony could possibly be given about the knife that would justify displaying it to the jury.
Is that all?
Yes, Your Honor.
Ms. Klausner, any response?
Your Honor, these images are not cumulative as they are key pieces in this case and must be shown to the jury as aid to their understanding of what happened at the scene. Showing these images are crucial.
I'm going to overrule the objection.
Okay. Detective, I'm going to stop sharing and then after initial investigation, were you able to obtain any other types of evidence?
I was, yes. I was not only able to obtain call detail records or CDRs that we discussed earlier, but I was also able to obtain video evidence relevant to this case.
What type of video evidence was this?
They were videos from a Ring video account that was installed at the residence of 444 South Flower Street. Ring is a sort of dual system. It serves as both audio and video surveillance. And through gaining access to account data and passwords, I was able to grab some relevant videos to this case off of the account.
Were you able to access videos from multiple cameras on the property?
I was, yes. Mr. Brackman, the resident of 444 South Flower Street, happened to have 3 cameras installed, so yes.
Okay, at this time, I am going to go ahead and screen share exhibits 11 and 12. Looking first at exhibit 11, what is this image here?
Exhibit 11 is a link to a video captured from the second camera at Mr. Brackman's house. This camera was angled towards the side gate of Mr. Brackman's residence, and so it's a link to that video.
Okay, and I'm so sorry. I just realized I meant to point out exhibit 10. So as I show exhibit 10, what is this link?
Exhibit 10 is once again another one of those relevant videos pulled off of Mr. Brackman's Ring video account, but this video was taken from the front porch facing camera installed at Mr. Brackman's residence.
Do you recognize this link to be accurate?
I do, yes. This is the exact link that I pulled from Brackman's account.
Okay, taking a look at exhibit 12, what is this link here?
This is a link to another one of those relevant videos that I pulled off of Brackman's account. This video was taken from the back door facing camera at Mr. Brackman's residence, and so this is a link to that video.
Your Honor, at this time, the prosecution moves to admit exhibits 10 and 12 into evidence.
Ms. Farrell,
No objections, Your Honor.
so admitted.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and play exhibit 10 here. Detective, as this video plays, what do we see pursuing?
In this video, we can see an intruder, later identified as the defendant in this case, dressed in a full disguise, a Halloween mask, dark clothing, gloves, go up to Mr. Brackman's front door, attempt to enter through their front door, but as it appears to be locked, they are unsuccessful in their entrance and then turn away.
And looking at exhibit 12, I'm sorry, I appeared to have lost my place, but looking at as I play exhibit 12, what do we see in this video?
In this video, we can once again see the same intruder, again later identified as the defendant in this case, attempt to enter Mr. Brackman's residence once again, this time through the back door of their residence. As we can see when we played this video, the intruder does so successfully, gains entrance to the house, and then slides the sliding back door closed behind them.
Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and stop screen sharing. Detective, through viewing these videos, were you able to come to a conclusion on if, in your expert opinion, you thought this entrance was welcomed or forced?
I was able to come to a conclusion, yes.
What was your conclusion?
My conclusion was that this entrance was in fact forced, as we see the same intruder attempt to enter through two different entryways, and we as well don't see this same intruder holding any keys or other methods of entrance into this house. I was able to conclude that this entrance was not only unlawful, but it was in fact forced.
Okay. Lastly, Detective, you said that you were able to obtain CDRs in this case, correct?
I was, yes.
And how were they pertinent to the case?
They were pertinent to this case as I was able to obtain them for the defendant Avery Becker's phone.
Were you able to create any kind of representation of the CDRs?
I was, yes. CDRs are quite confusing to look at if you don't necessarily know what you're looking for, and so for the sake of of aiding the jury, I created diagrams that not only show a map of the locations around Mr. Brackman's home, but the ranges of relevant cell towers laid over that map.
Would you recognize that map today?
I would, yes.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and screen share again. Looking at Exhibit 16, Detective, what do you see of the defendant's location in this diagram?
In this diagram, we can see the whereabouts of the defendant's phone and by extension, the defendant on March 6, 2020. We can see through the dotted blue line marked on this diagram that the defendant's phone, as well as the defendant themselves, moved from their home to Mr. Brackman's house around the times of the murder.
Thank you. No further questions.
Ms. Farrell, cross-examination?
Yes, Your Honor. Good afternoon, Detective Markowitz.
Good afternoon.
Let's start with the crime scene. You arrived at the crime scene and observed a ring camera?
3.
The person observed from the videos from March 6 was wearing gloves, a hoodie, and a Halloween mask?
Yes.
So they weren't showing any identifiable features other than height and build?
Height and build specifically, yes.
And no identifiable features besides that?
Beyond that, no.
Both of which can easily be altered with clothing and padding?
They can, yes, but I didn't see any padding being worn by the defendant in these videos.
All right. And this was a part in your conclusion that the perpetrator was Avery Becker?
Yes.
You collected photographs of the blood splatter in the crime scene, correct?
I did, yes, not by me specifically, but as I mentioned earlier, uniformed officers typically arrive before me, and they did.
All right. And these photographs are corrupted and cannot be accessed for independent analysis?
Unfortunately, yes, that is true.
Let's move on to the cell phone and texts. You examined cell data records in this case?
I did not cell data records, but call detail records is, I think, what you're getting at there.
Yes, of course. Thank you. And these records were for March 6th, 2020?
They were, yes.
And you noted that repeated calls and texts were received from Taylor Perkins?
I did, yes. I believe you're referencing to Miss Becker's phone, and yes.
Yes.
Okay, yes, then.
And all of these calls and texts went unanswered?
They did, yes.
Yet you never considered that the pattern of multiple calls and texts left unanswered was in line with a lost phone?
No, given what Miss Becker was doing at the time that these phones were, or that these calls, excuse me, were being made, I didn't think that Miss Becker would have the opportunity to check her phone.
Even when you learned that Miss Becker lost her phone the day before the crime?
Yes, even then.
And all of the cell data records presented today are from March 6th, the day after Miss Becker lost her phone?
Yes.
You received screenshots of incriminating texts from Alex Cifuentes?
I did, yes.
But you never saw the original versions of the texts?
I did by way of screenshots.
This is because Miss Cifuentes didn't bring her phone to the interview? I'm sorry, can I just recheck? Is it Miss?
It is, yes.
Thank you so much. This is because Miss Cifuentes didn't bring her phone to the interview?
Will you clarify what you're getting at? What is because?
You never saw the original versions of the texts because Miss Cifuentes didn't bring her phone to the interview?
I saw the original text through screenshots, but as you're getting at, not through the phone itself, but through the screenshots that were taken on that specific phone that you're referencing.
Yes. And you found it very odd that a teenager came to the interview without her phone, correct?
I did, yes.
Yet you never followed up and secured the original text evidence?
I did through screenshots.
But you would agree that it's standard procedure to preserve decisive evidence such as these texts?
Not necessarily standard procedure. I thought that the screenshots sufficed.
All right. Yet, despite thinking that the screenshots sufficed, there is no way for you to know for certain that these text messages are authentic?
I know through the conversation that I had with Alex Cifuentes and the details of this text conversation that I had with Alex Cifuentes that they are in fact authentic.
Yet you never saw the original versions of the texts on the phone?
Not on the phone itself, but through screenshots taken on the phone.
All right, now let's talk about what you didn't do. You considered that the murder could have been the work of a disgruntled ex-client?
Initially, yes, but through further investigation, I discovered no.
All right. And Blair Rollins is another suspect in this case, correct?
Yes.
And you've listened to the audio recording of Blair Rollins' father swearing revenge against Coach Brackman?
I do not believe I have, no.
You haven't listened to the audio of a suspect in this case swearing revenge against the victim?
I have not, because I believe the audio recording is of Jonathan Rollins, if I am not incorrect there.
All right. Your Honor, permission for co-counsel to publish to the jury what has already been admitted as Exhibit 16?
Granted.
This is the illustration you made in regards to Miss Becker's phone's whereabouts on March 6th, is it not?
It is, yes, it is one of two.
And in regards to Exhibit 16, Miss Rollins' house is very close to that of Miss Becker?
It is within the same cell tower range, but not necessarily close. They don't appear to live in the same neighborhood or anything.
All right. So the route from either house to Mr. Brackman's might follow a similar route to your blue line?
Similar, but not the same, yes.
And there are no cell data records, call detail records being presented today concerning the location of Blair Rollins' phone?
No.
All right, thank you, Your Honor. I have no further questions.
Any redirect?
No redirect, Your Honor.
All right, thank you. Detective Markowitz, you can step down. Team Grease, call your next witness.
The prosecution calls Kyle Kuzak to the stand. And I'm sorry, because of the changing of witnesses, there will just be a slight delay.
Thank you.
Please state your name, spelling your last for the record.
My name is Kyle Kuzak, Kuzak.
Ms. Kuzak, what line of work are you in?
I'm a crime scene reconstruction investigator.
What does it mean to be a crime scene reconstruction investigator?
Well, I work closely with the local police force and I go into crime scenes when they need me. And I look at all the evidence and I try and come to the conclusion of what events happened and in what order.
How long have you been in this line of work?
I've been doing crime scene reconstruction for 19 years and I've spent the last 3 years of my work with the City of Denver Police Department.
Are you considered a police officer with the work you do?
No. I'm a crime scene reconstruction investigator, so I'm a civilian employee.
How do you get your cases assigned then?
Well, like I said, I work closely with the police department, and if they come across a crime scene that they need help, doing crime scene reconstruction on, they call me in.
Have you attended any conferences or training for your line of work?
Yes, I've been to multiple conferences, and I'm also certified with the Colorado Bureau of Investigation.
Your Honor, now the prosecution would like to admit Kyle Kuzak as an expert in crime scene reconstruction.
Any voir dire? Ms. Awell?
Yes, Your Honor. Good afternoon, Ms. Kuzak.
Hi.
I would like to start with your qualifications. You stated today that you have experience as a crime scene investigator,
Yes, I have a lot of experience.
yet you haven't provided a resume or CV to document where you have worked,
No one asked me, no.
and you did not provide a statement or record of a university attended,
Again, no one asked me. I could tell you, though, if you want.
and no indication of the number of homicides or burglaries you've investigated.
Again, I wasn't asked, but
Your Honor, pursuant to Rule 702, we object to this witness being admitted as an expert on the grounds that they have provided no evidence that they possess the knowledge, skill, experience, training, or education to be considered as such.
Thank you, Ms. Awell. Ms. Thompson, any response?
Yes, Your Honor. As again in 702, it says that an expert can be admitted under experience. And as Ms. Kuzak has explained, she's had 19 years of experience in her field and that she's attended multiple conferences and works closely with the police department. So under Rule 702, she's qualified by her experience.
Thank you. I'm going to qualify Ms. Kuzak as an expert in crime scene reconstruction.
Thank you. May I continue my line of questioning?
Yes, please.
Ms. Kuzak, is there anything significant about March 6, 2020?
it was the day that Mr. Brackman was murdered that this whole case started.
Were you assigned to the murder of Mackenzie Brackman?
Yes, I was. I got to the scene after other members of the crime lab.
And where was the location of the scene?
It was 444 South Flower Street, somewhere here in Colorado.
Once you got to the scene, what did you do when you arrived?
Well, I just started my overall investigation process. I looked at the hard evidence I found there and started coming up with, possibilities of what could have happened at the scene.
Did you review any evidence during this time?
Well, I reviewed all the evidence I could find, anything from police reports and the photos that they took, but yeah.
Did those help aid your conclusion?
Oh, of course they did.
And did you use any processes while this investigation happened?
Yeah, well, I went into this case with my 2 key principles I use for every case, and I used my 5-step process with this case.
And in your other cases that you've used this 5-step process and 2 key principles, have those been proven to be successful?
Yes, they do. I'm very good at what I do.
Using both the evidence and your process, what do you believe happened on March 6th?
I believe it was a burglary gone wrong. As we could see earlier today in the ring videos, an intruder entered Mr. Brackman's home, and they weren't armed, making this a burglary, not a robbery. And the evidence that I found at the scene and everything that I reviewed, and with all of my experience, I do believe that a burglary was about to take place.
If this was a burglary gone wrong, why do you believe it went wrong?
I believe the intruder was surprised by Mr. Brackman being home. I believe they were knowledgeable of the residence and knew Mr. Brackman's general habits, and were caught off guard when he was home.
What do you believe happened from there to result in the murder of Mackenzie Brackman?
Well, I believe Mr. Brackman armed himself with a knife, and then there was some kind of a struggle between the perpetrator and the victim. Ultimately, the intruder got hold of the knife and stabbed Mr. Brackman in the back, and Mr. Brackman pulled the knife out of his own back and then bled to death.
Thank you. No further questions.
Any cross-examination?
Yes, Your Honor. Before I begin, may I get a time check?
12 minutes and 38 seconds.
Thank you. Ms. Cusack, I would like to begin with your conclusions in this case. You stated that this was clearly a planned burglary gone wrong,
Yes, I believe that.
but you stated that the intruder likely chose the time of day for your own imagined reason.
I'm sorry?
You stated that the intruder likely chose the time of day for your own imagined reason.
The conclusion that I came to was the intruder knew Brackman's general habits.
And you stated that the victim would surely have heard the back door slide open, but you don't
Either
know,
that.
do you?
Oh, I'm so sorry.
No worries. Do you want?
Can you please repeat that?
Question, Ms. Awa.
Yes. And you stated that the victim would surely have heard the back door slide open, but you don't know that definitely, do you?
I don't, but another possibility is the victim was alerted by the Ring app notifications that he got on his phone.
Let's talk about your review of the crime scene evidence. Your analysis of blood spray and cast out blood splatter droplets were based off of photos taken by the police?
That and of what I observed at the crime scene, yes.
And these photos were corrupted, so your analysis cannot be independently verified.
They were corrupted, but I was able to review them before they were corrupted, and I believe that I did a fairly good job on this investigation.
So that was a yes, the photos were corrupted.
Yes, they were, unfortunately.
And you admit that you were not able to recreate all event segments?
No, I didn't have a camera in the house or anything, and crime scene reconstruction isn't an exact science.
But you had evidence that you could not place.
I'm sorry, what do you mean by that?
You had evidence that you could not place in this case?
I'm sorry, I still don't completely understand your question.
I'll rephrase. You were given evidence, and from this, you could not place all the evidence.
Within the home, I came to a conclusion that used all of the evidence that I found at the crime scene and was a fairly accurate events of what happened that day.
Thank you, Ms. Cusack. Let's move on to other possible theories. The expert witness for the defense, Professor Blake Van Owen, gave a statement that contradicts your conclusions in this case?
Yes, that's true.
And you admit that Professor Van Owen's conclusions are outside of your own expertise?
A lot of them are, but their crime scene reconstruction investigation did not line up with what my theory was.
And so in your comprehensive, thorough investigation, you didn't note in your witness tracking sheet that Avery Becker claimed to have been set up by the 2 other witnesses or suspects?
I'm sorry, can you rephrase your question?
I will re-ask my question. In your comprehensive, thorough investigation, you didn't note in your witness information tracking sheet that Avery Becker claimed to have been set up by the 2 other suspects?
No, I guess I didn't.
And you didn't note that Taylor Perkins also supported this theory?
No, I didn't. Again, I didn't conduct the interviews. I simply got that information from Detective Markowitz.
And you list Blair Rollins as a suspect in your witness information tracking sheet, correct?
Yes, that's accurate. The police came up with them as a suspect.
Are you aware that there is a recording of Jonathan Rollins promising to get revenge on Mackenzie Brackman?
Yes, I am aware of it.
And you did not include this in your thorough and comprehensive investigation?
No, again, the police force concluded early on that Blair Rollins really wasn't the primary suspect we should focus on.
But that was a no. You did not include this.
Yeah, no.
Thank you, Your Honor. I have no further questions.
Thank you. Redirect.
Yes, Your Honor. May I have a brief time check?
10 minutes left for direct.
Thank you. Ms. Kuzak, is it your job to conduct interviews?
No. My job is crime scene reconstruction. That's it.
And did you collect any hard evidence on this case?
Personally, no. I reviewed what the police collected and what I saw at the crime scene.
Was it your fault that the missing photos were corrupted?
Really, it was no one's fault. I mean, but no, I wasn't in charge of them. I mean, it is a bad thing that happened.
And to clarify, is it your job to come up with alternate suspects?
No, again, I do crime scene reconstruction. That's it.
Thank you. No further questions.
Any recross?
No recross, Your Honor.
All right. Ms. Cusack, you can step down. Prosecution, call your last witness.
The prosecution calls Alex Cifuentes to the stand. Ms. Cifuentes, are you ready? Ms. Cifuentes, are you ready?
Yes, I am.
Please state your name and spell the last for the record.
My name is Alex Cifuentes, Sifuentes.
Are you currently enrolled in school, Ms. Cifuentes?
Yes, I am. I'm a senior at Colorado High School, but we call it CHS.
Are you part of any extracurriculars there?
Yeah, I'm on the mock trial team.
Do you know anyone on the mock trial team?
Well, I knew everyone, yeah.
Could you name some specific people?
Yeah, my really close friend Avery was on the team, as well as their friend Taylor.
What was Avery's last name?
It was Becker.
And what was Taylor's last name?
I believe Perkins.
And would you recognize Miss Becker if she was here today?
Yeah, absolutely.
Your Honor, the prosecution asks that Avery Becker, the defendant, turn on their camera for identification purposes.
Granted.
Ms. Cifuentes, could you please point Miss Becker out by a piece of clothing?
Yeah, she's wearing a white shirt, I believe.
Your Honor, let the record reflect that the witness has correctly identified the defendant.
The record will so reflect. Thank you.
Ms. Cifuentes, did you have a coach on the mock trial team?
Yeah, we had such an amazing coach. His name was Mr. Mackenzie Brackman.
What was your relationship like with Mackenzie Brackman?
I loved him. I thought he was an amazing coach, and he was super sweet and understanding. I thought he was just a great person overall.
From what you observed being on the team, how did Avery and Mr. Brackman act towards each other?
From what I saw, they were constantly arguing and constantly disagreeing about stuff, and it just really stressed out the whole team.
Now, let's talk a little bit about your relationship with Miss Becker. How would you describe that relationship?
Honestly, I thought Avery and I were super good friends. Avery actually introduced me to mock trial freshman year, and ever since then, we've spent so much time together at mock trial. I felt very close to Avery.
Did you and Avery ever hang out outside of mock trial?
Yeah, actually, the whole team hung out at this place called the Fry Shack. It was just something really fun for us to all go do outside of mock trial.
Now, moving on to the night of March 5th, what were you doing that night?
I was actually at the Fry Shack with the mock trial team.
Was Avery Becker there?
Yeah, I guess she was.
Did you talk to her that night?
Yeah, I did. I actually sat with her and Taylor Perkins.
What did you do with them?
I actually played games on Avery's phone, and Avery actually had thanked me for something I had done for her.
Now, moving on to Avery and Mr. Brackman's relationship again, you said that they didn't always get along. Were there any large conflicts that stood out to you?
Yeah, there was honestly quite a few, but I think there was a really big one after our regional competition.
What happened after the regional competition?
At the regional competition, Avery had won some pretty great awards, and at the next practice, Coach Brackman basically told Avery in front of everyone that she didn't deserve the awards, and it really, really upset Avery, and she stormed out of practice and wrote Worst Attorney Award on Coach Brackman's car.
Do you know if there were any consequences for Avery?
Yeah, Avery was kicked off the team permanently.
Do you know if Avery ever tried to get back on the team?
Yeah, she reached out to me asking if I was willing to talk to Coach Brackman about being let back on the team.
Did you try and help her get back on the team?
Yeah, I told her I would, and so I did.
Did Mr. Brackman let her back on the team?
No, he did not. He was still really upset about everything and just wasn't willing to do that.
Did you tell Avery this?
Yeah, obviously, and she didn't react super well.
How do you know she didn't react well?
She said to me that if Coach Brackman was upset about his car, then he should see what's going to happen to his house.
Did Avery ever tell you what she was going to do to his house?
After I asked, yes, she said that she was going to break in while he was at work and just trash the
Objection, Your
place.
Honor. Hearsay.
Ms. Chamberlain.
Your Honor, this is not hearsay because of the party opponent rule.
Granted. Overruled.
Would you like me to re-ask my question?
Yes.
Yes, please.
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
Me
sorry.
too.
Did Avery ever tell you what she was going to do to his house?
Yeah, like I said, after I asked, she said that while Brackman was at work, she was going to just break into his house and just trash the place.
Did Avery ever talk to you again after this?
I don't believe so, no.
Thank you, Your Honor. No further questions.
Cross-examination.
Yes, Your Honor. Before we begin, can the court all hear and see me clearly?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. All right. Good evening, Ms. Fuentes.
Good evening.
Before we begin, I'd like to offer you my condolences. I know losing your coach must be hard for you.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
I'd like to start with your time in the mock trial team. You were on the CHS mock trial team at the same time as Avery Becker, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
And you claim that both you and Avery were best friends and teammates who supported each other.
Yeah, we were really close on the team, yeah.
However, you say that Avery was coasting on her good looks and didn't have any real talent or skill?
Yeah, from what I saw, she just didn't put in the work.
And you considered Avery's success in mock trial as a slap in the face?
A little bit, just considering how much work I put in and and the lack of work I saw her put in.
And you thought that the mock trial team would be better off without Avery on it?
Honestly, yes, I did.
And you were excited about the new role you would have on the team with Avery gone?
Yes, I was.
After Avery was taken off the team, you saw each other at the local hangout known as the Fry Shack, correct?
Yes, yeah.
And she was kind enough to let you play a new game on her phone?
Yeah, yes, she was.
And this was right before she had left the Fry Shack with Taylor Perkins?
Yeah, she did, after that, leave the Fry Shack.
I'd like to move on to what happened after the incident. You were called in for an interview at the police station, correct?
Yes, I was.
And the purpose of this interview became to investigate the text messages on your phone?
That's where it ended up, yes.
However, this phone was left behind at your home during the time of the interview?
Yeah, it was just kind of a crappy phone, and I forgot that I left it charging and just spaced it.
And the detective said that it was all right for you to send in screenshots of the alleged messages instead.
Yeah, that's what I did. I offered to bring the phone back in at a later time, and they said screenshots would suffice, so that's what I did.
And Avery claims that you faked these text messages?
I did find out later that I was being accused of faking these, which was honestly pretty upsetting as to I had no reason to.
And now you claim to no longer have this crucial piece of evidence, your phone, in your possession?
Like I said, the battery was pretty crappy, so I ended up getting a new phone about 3 months ago.
And now you have no idea where it is now?
No, I don't.
So in the end, Avery claims that these messages are fabricated, and because you got rid of your phone, there is no way to verify that those messages were in fact real.
I guess not. Again, I'm pretty upset that I'm being accused of faking these. As for I have no reason, but you're correct.
Thank you. Your Honor, I have no further questions.
Okay, any redirect?
No, Your Honor.
All right. The witness may step down. Any further witnesses for the prosecution?
No, Your Honor.
No, Your Honor.
Okay, let's have Team Fiji call its first witness.
Your Honor, before we go, it appears our timekeeper has been kicked from the room again.
Okay.
We could just wait a minute or two for her to get back on. Thank
Sure.
you so much. It appears our timekeeper has re-entered the room on another computer, so we should be good to proceed now. Thank you so much for waiting.
Absolutely. Call your first witness.
Thank you. The defense would like to call Avery Becker to the stand. Would you like me to begin, Your Honor?
Yes.
Thank. Good evening, Ms. Becker.
Good evening.
Can you state your name and spell it for the court?
Yes, my name is Avery Becker, and that's spelled Averybecker.
I'd like to start with some background information. What is your relationship to Mackenzie Brackman?
Coach Brackman was the mock trial coach for my mock trial team at Colorado High School. I did mock trial for a while in high school, so I'd say that Coach Brackman and I knew each other pretty well.
And when did you join the mock trial team?
I joined my freshman year, and I did it all 4 years of high school.
And how was Mr. Brackman as a coach?
Well, for starters, mock trial was really fun for me. I was on a successful team. We would have won state had we gone to state because of the COVID situation. We won regionals, and it was a really good time for me. And I did it all 4 years of high school, so I'd say I was pretty committed to it.
Can you tell me some more?
Of course. I first off want to say that I was completely shocked and saddened to hear about what happened to Coach Brackman. But if I have to be honest, Coach Brackman and I didn't always see eye to eye on everything. He constantly kept us after practice going over the same thing over and over again. But he did get our team to a place where we were competitive, and I could tell that he cared a lot about his students.
And how many times have you been to his house for mock trial or other reasons?
I've never been to Coach Brackman's house. I didn't even know where he lived.
Thank you. And now let's turn to a relationship between you and Taylor Perkins. Who is Taylor Perkins?
Taylor Perkins is my best friend. We were on the mock trial team together all through high school. And usually we just use practice as a fun way to hang out with each other, text each other, normal things that teenagers do in after school activities.
And how did Mr. Brackman respond to this?
Well, Coach Brackman seemed to get a little upset whenever he thought that Taylor and I weren't paying attention. I guess he thought that maybe we didn't work hard enough, and he actually ended up demoting me down to the B team because I guess he felt that I would work better if Taylor and I were on separate teams.
I'd also like to discuss your relationship with Alex Cifuentes. What is your relationship with Alex Cifuentes?
Alex was another one of my teammates on the mock trial team. I really wouldn't consider us to be friends. We've never gotten along.
And what was it like being on the team with Alex?
I felt that Alex wanted me off the team so that she could be named best attorney.
And what was the nature of your relationship with Alex outside of school?
Alex and I didn't have any meaningful relationship outside of school, and she would be the last person I would ask for help on for anything. So those texts that she claims I sent, I never sent them.
Now, let's focus on what happened when you got removed from the team. What was going on beforehand?
Honestly, I was pretty upset. Coach Brackman never gave us any of the credit for the work that we did. He constantly criticized my work and the work of others. And like I mentioned before, he ended up demoting me down to the B team, which personally I felt wasn't good for the A team.
And then why were you removed from the team?
I made a really, really foolish and silly mistake after practice one day. I was at the whiteboard that we use to outline good and bad things we do at competitions. And I got frustrated with a couple of the comments that Coach Brackman made about me. And I left with a whiteboard marker still in my hand. And I ended up writing Worst Attorney Award on the hood of his car.
And what were you thinking in that moment?
Well, in that moment, I wanted him to know exactly what I thought. But looking back, I'm so ashamed because that isn't what I thought. And I never should have done it.
And what did you use to write Worst Attorney Award on his car with?
Well, I thought it was a dry erase marker because I had used, or that's what we used to outline stuff. And I was just about to outline everything I did on the whiteboard before I stormed out. But I realized that it was a permanent marker. And when Brackman found out, he kicked me off the team for good.
And then what happened?
I was obviously really upset about it. I mean, I'd worked so hard to be on the mock trial team, and it felt really terrible that my world was just crumbling around me. But I went home and talked to my mom, and she told me to apologize. And that's exactly what I did.
What did you do afterwards?
Well, I went to Coach Brackman, apologized many times. I offered to get a job to have his car repainted. I offered to scrub his car, and he just ignored me. And I'm devastated I never got a chance to apologize in person.
Finally, the prosecution introduced testimony about the alleged whereabouts of your phone, and I'd like to discuss them with you. When did you last see your phone?
I last saw my phone on March 5th, and I haven't seen it since.
And where do you believe you lost it?
Well, on March 5th, Taylor and I went to the Fry Shack and we went to the mall. But at the Fry Shack, there were a bunch of mock trial people there, including Alex.
Was there any interaction between you and Alex?
Yeah, Alex and I talked.
And what happened to your phone?
I woke up on March 6th and realized I didn't have it.
And what did you do to try to find it?
Well, Taylor had his phone, so I went over to his house first, and Taylor had his phone, and so we just decided to skip school and go look for it. And that was basically what we did.
Finally, I'd like to talk about Blair Rollins. How familiar are you with Blair Rollins?
I mean, I'm not that familiar with Blair Rollins, but everybody knows who he is because he's a kid that went to our school.
And what do you know about Blair Rollins' relationship to Mackenzie Brackman?
Everybody knows that Blair and Coach Brackman didn't get along because, well, Coach Brackman lost the case that sent Blair's father to jail.
And what do you make of that?
Well, to me, that makes me feel like Blair didn't like Brackman at all.
Are you aware of the ring videos?
Yes, I'm aware of the ring videos.
In the video, there's a figure. Do you recognize this figure?
No. And I think it's absolutely crazy that people assume that the person in the video is me. You can't see any identifiable features, and it could easily be mistaken for anyone.
Does that look like anyone else?
Yeah, it could easily be mistaken for Blair Rollins.
Why do you say that?
Anyone who saw me and Blair walking away could easily confuse the two of us. And now Blair's disappeared.
Thank you, Ms. Becker. Finally, for the jury, did you kill Mackenzie Brackman?
No, I did not kill Mackenzie Brackman.
Thank you, Your Honor. I have no further questions.
Cross-examination?
Yes, Your Honor. Miss Becker, you were really good at mock trial, weren't you?
I was, yes.
You could say you were a natural.
Yeah, I was pretty dedicated to it.
But not everyone appreciated this talent.
I guess I have no way of knowing what other people thought.
Your own coach said you didn't deserve the awards that you got.
Yeah.
He even went as far as to demote you from A-team.
Yeah, I guess.
But your best friend Taylor had your back.
Yeah, I mean, Taylor's a really good friend, and we would do anything for each other.
He quit A-team for you, correct?
Yes, he did. But I didn't tell him to do that. I didn't ask him to do that. Taylor quit on his own accords.
But that did leave you this spot on A team?
Yes, I guess it did. But again, I didn't ask for my spot back. Taylor just did it because he was looking out for me.
Now, let's talk a little bit about the practice after regionals. You walked in with your head held pretty high, you feeling pretty confident?
Yeah, I was pretty confident. I just won a couple of awards and I'd worked really hard for them.
You were expecting some appreciation from your team.
Yeah, I guess I was.
But instead, your coach humiliated you in front of your team.
Yeah, Brackman tended to do that a lot to me.
He said you didn't deserve the awards.
Yeah.
You stormed out of practice.
Yeah, I was pretty upset with the comments he made about me.
You stormed out with that permanent marker in your hand.
At the time, I thought it was an expo marker, but yes, I guess I did storm out with a marker in my hand.
It did turn out to be permanent, though.
Right, but I had no idea that it was permanent. And either way, I shouldn't have done it. It was a stupid mistake.
You stormed out of the building?
I did.
And there was Mr. Brackman's obnoxious Porsche.
Yes, again, I made a lot of mistakes that day, and writing on his porch was one of them.
You wrote Worst Attorney Award, all 18 letters on the hood of his car.
Yes, I did, but it was a stupid, childish mistake that I'm really ashamed of now.
After you got kicked off the team, you went home.
I did.
You told your mom everything.
Yeah, I told my mom certain parts of the day and I explained to her why I was upset.
You didn't tell her about the car.
Like I mentioned before, I was really, really ashamed of the mistake I had made, and I really didn't want to explain it to anyone. I was high on emotion, and considering what I did previously while high on emotion, I figured it was just best to leave that part out.
Let's talk a little bit more about your relationship with Mr. Brackman. When he demoted you, it made you pretty angry?
Yeah, I'd worked really hard to be on the team, so it was pretty upsetting that he demoted me.
When he humiliated you, it upset you?
Yeah, it upset me a lot.
Finally, when he kicked you off the team, it made you angry.
Of course, I'd worked so hard to be on that team, but if you're saying that this is enough to drive me to murder my coach, it's not. Brackman and I may not have gotten along at every single practice, but there were practices where Brackman and I got along very well, and I could tell he cared a lot about his students.
Thank you, Your Honor. No further questions.
Redirect?
No redirect, Your Honor.
Thank you. Ms. Becker, you may step down.
Thank you, Your Honor.
You're welcome. Defense next witness.
Yes, Your Honor. The defense would like to call Taylor Perkins to the stand.
Mr. Perkins.
Good evening, Mr. Perkins.
Good evening.
Oh, I'm sorry, somebody. My apologies. We're doing our trial in our school and there's a trash pickup. So
That's not a problem.
yeah, I'll just continue for the moment with a mask on. Can you all hear me okay?
That's fine.
All right. Good evening, Mr. Perkins.
Good evening.
Could you state your name and spell it for the court?
Taylor Perkins, TaylorPerkins.
All right, thank you. Could you start by telling us about your connection with this case?
Well, so I was on the mock trial team at Colorado High School with Avery, who was my best friend. We were both seniors.
What was Avery's role in the team?
She loved it like nothing else, and she always wanted to be a lawyer, and she was really good at it. She did some improving, but she was still easily the best on the team.
Did Avery get along with everyone on the team?
She got along well with most of the team members, but some people were bitter about how well she did.
How did she get along with Alex Cifuentes?
Not great. On the surface, they were polite, but Avery was the star of the team. And
Objection, lack of personal knowledge.
Ms. Farrell.
Your Honor, the witness spent close to 4 years on a mock trial team with both Avery Becker and Alex Cifuentes and had plenty of time to observe the relationship between Alex Cifuentes and Avery Becker.
Overruled.
Would you like me to re-ask the question, Mr. Perkins?
Yes, please.
How did Avery get along with Alex Cifuentes?
Not great. On the surface, they were polite, but Avery was the star of our mock trial team and Alex wasn't, so it caused some tension between them.
How did you get along with Miss Cifuentes?
Alex came off as insincere or passive aggressive to me.
Let's talk about what happened with Avery and the mock trial team. What happened before regionals to change Avery's status with the team?
So Avery showed up extremely unprepared about a month before regionals, and Coach Brackman lost it. He demoted her to the B team.
After he demoted her, what did you do?
I left the team so he would have to put Avery back onto the A team.
Whose idea was that?
It was 100% my idea. Avery didn't ask me, and I just knew it was the right thing to do.
Once Avery was back on, were there any more problems?
Coach Brackman and Avery got into a fight, and Avery rode on his car.
What did Coach Brackman do after he saw the damage to his car?
He kicked her off the team.
And to your best perception, how did Avery react to that?
She was super sorry, and she apologized over and over again and texted almost everyone on the team trying to get back on.
Let's talk about what happened after Avery was kicked off of the team. What did the two of you do the Thursday after Avery was kicked off?
We went to the Fry Shack and we ran into the rest of the mock trial team, including Alex.
And what day was that?
March 5th, the day before Coach Brackman's death.
Did Avery ever leave her phone out while you were at the Fry Shack?
Yeah, she got upset after talking to Alex and went to the bathroom, leaving her phone on the table. Alex and I just talked, and then when she came back, we left the Fry Shack.
When did you realize something had happened to Avery's phone?
The next morning, Avery wasn't picking up her phone, wasn't responding to our texts when she was coming to pick me up to go to school, and I asked her about it, and she realized then.
What did the two of you do after you realized it was gone?
There wasn't anything important going on at school, so we just decided to skip and go look for her phone, and I called it a bunch of times, but it just went to voicemail.
Of course. And when did you find out Coach Brackman was dead?
The same time as the rest of the mock trial team, a while after it happened.
Did you and Avery discuss Coach Brackman's death?
Avery and I talked about it, but we had no idea what happened.
Finally, I'd like to talk about Blair Rollins. Do you know Blair Rollins?
Blair went to CHS with us. I wasn't friends with Blair, mostly because they were a little bit weird.
Did you ever see Blair and Alex together?
All the time.
Do you know if Blair knew Coach Brackman?
Yeah, Blair knew him.
Why do you say that?
Well, everyone knows that Brackman lost the case that sent Blair's dad to jail.
And what was Miss Rollins' reputation in school?
We all thought she was a little creepy and violent, especially after her dad's case.
Was Blair Rollins in school on March 6th?
No.
Have you seen Blair Rollins since Coach Brackman's death?
No, Blair pretty much just disappeared.
Finally, is there any way that Avery could have killed Coach Brackman?
No, she was with me the entire time.
Of course. Thank you, Your Honor. I have no further questions.
Cross-examination?
Yes, Your Honor. You're best friends with Avery Becker, aren't you?
Yes.
You'd do anything for Avery, right?
Of course.
You were on the mock trial team with Avery, correct?
Yes, I was.
And you thought Avery was the best on the team.
Easily the best on our team, yeah.
You also thought that Mr. Brackman was mediocre.
He wasn't the best, but he was what we had.
From what you observed, it seemed like Avery felt the same way.
Yeah.
Avery played a lot of pranks on Mr. Brackman, didn't she?
That I cannot recall. Sorry.
Well, you say that Avery liked to freak out Mr. Brackman with her pranks, right?
Yeah.
Avery was eventually demoted from the A team to the B team, wasn't she?
Yes, she was.
So you stepped down for Avery, didn't you?
Yeah, I completely quit the team so she could get back on to the A team.
You didn't give Mr. Brackman any choice but to let Avery back on the team.
It was the right choice for the team, so yeah.
Avery competed at regional competitions with the team, didn't she?
Yeah, yes.
Soon after, Avery was kicked off the team permanently, though.
After what she did to Coach Brackman's car, yeah.
Avery tried to apologize to Mr. Brackman a lot, right?
Yeah.
But Mr. Brackman didn't seem to want to see her, did he?
No.
So you and Avery spent some time at the Fry Shack on March 5th of 2020, right?
Yeah.
You ran into the rest of the mock trial team while you were there, didn't you?
Yeah.
Alex Cifuentes was at the Fry Shack that night, wasn't she?
Mm-hmm.
Avery
Mr.
and Alex didn't.
I'm sorry to interrupt. Mr. Perkins, if you could answer yes or no for the record.
Sorry, of course.
That's okay.
Alex and Avery didn't seem to get along that night, did they?
Well, something happened between them that caused Avery to run off. So, yeah. Yes.
Avery took a break to go to the bathroom and cool off, didn't she?
Yes.
When Avery came back, you two decided to leave, right?
Yes.
When you left, you didn't see if Avery picked up her phone or not, did you?
No, I didn't.
It wasn't until the next morning that the two of you realized the phone was missing, right?
When she was not responding to my texts and when she was coming to pick me up, that's when she knew that she lost her phone.
When Avery came to pick you up, you mentioned that Avery hadn't responded to your text that morning, right?
Yes.
So you decided to ditch school in order to find the phone, right?
There's nothing important going on, so yeah.
You decided that sometime in the morning, right?
Yes.
So the first place you went to look was the mall, wasn't it?
Yes.
And then the two of you went to the Fry Shack, right?
Yep. Yes.
You and Avery later went back to the Fry Shack that afternoon to check with the next staff, right?
That I cannot recall.
You and Avery went back to check with the afternoon staff at the Fry Shack.
I cannot recall that, so sorry.
That's all right. When you were at the Fry Shack, or I'm sorry, you spent the whole day looking for Avery's phone, didn't you?
Yes.
And you would gladly give her this time because you're her best friend, right?
Yes.
Thank you. No further questions.
Any redirect?
No redirect, Your Honor.
All right, Mr. Perkins, you may step down. Defense, call your next witness.
Yes, Your Honor. The defense calls for Professor Blake Van Owen to stand.
All right, inquire.
Before we begin, may I have a brief time check?
I have that you have 13 minutes and 2 seconds remaining.
Thank you very much. Good evening, Professor Van Owen.
Good evening.
Would you please state your name and spell out your last name for the court?
My name is Professor Blake Van Owen. That is spelled Vanowen.
I'd like to start with your background, education, as well as experience. What do you do for a living?
Well, I'm a private investigator, a professor, and an expert witness.
And where did your experience in these fields begin?
I began the Aurora Police Department.
And how did your experience develop over time?
I worked as a resource officer, security guard, and then went to private investigation.
And what qualifications have you obtained?
Well, I've earned a master's degree in criminal justice, and for the last 5 years, I've been teaching about police practices and social justice at CU Denver, after teaching about police practices and procedures at the Colorado Community College of the Rockies.
And how does your education as well as experience relate to this case?
I have the experience and training to recognize and examine the evidence of this case.
And what would you consider to be your fields of expertise?
Police practices, forensic evidence, and crime scene reconstruction.
And why do you consider these to be your fields of expertise?
Well, I've been accepted as defense expert in over 100 U.S. cases and U.S. district courts, and with my expertise in crime scene reconstruction, in general police investigation tactics, with a special team forensic evidence included in those 100 cases. U.S. district courts for districts of Colorado, Kansas, and Arizona, and in state courts, Colorado, Wyoming, Nebraska, and New Mexico. I've also been accepted by various courts as a crime scene reconstruction expert.
Your Honor, the defense would like to admit Professor Blake Van Owen as an expert in police practices, forensic evidence, and crime scene reconstruction pertinent to Rule 702.
Any voir dire, Ms. Thompson?
Yes, Your Honor. Ms. Van Owen, you haven't testified to any formal education in crime scene reconstruction.
I'm sorry, your audio cut out for me. Can you please repeat that?
Yes. You haven't testified to any formal education in crime scene reconstruction?
Well, I have experience in training. I guess not.
You haven't testified to any formal education, though?
No direct formal education, but I have been taught in somewhat of those fields.
And you were only a police officer for 10 months?
That is correct. I was delusioned with police office work.
You were a police officer for 10 months, just to clarify?
That is correct, yes.
You wrote an affidavit in this case?
Excuse me?
You wrote an affidavit in this case?
I'm confused what your question is. Can you please elaborate?
You wrote an affidavit in this case?
Oh, yes.
And in that you put all relevant and true facts?
That is correct.
Your Honor, let the record reflect co-counsel is screen sharing what has been previously marked as Blake Van Owen's affidavit.
I am not seeing a screen share right now.
I'm sorry, I'm just struggling with some technical difficulties. Can I ask time to stop for a second?
Sure.
Thank you. Ms. Van Owen, in your affidavit, you state that you were only a police officer for 9 months. Is that correct?
That is correct, yes.
And your previous statement was that you were an officer for 10 months?
That is correct.
Thank you. Co-counsel can stop screen sharing. Ms. Van Owen, you also were only a police officer, you were a police officer 8 years ago. Is that correct?
That is correct, yes.
And you haven't received any new training in police tactics?
No, but I have used what I've learned to expand my horizons.
But only in your 9 months of experience, you were able to testify in cases?
That is correct.
And just to clarify for the jury, that was 8 years ago that you learned all of these tactics.
Yes, but I still apply those tactics to what I do today. I have learned even more that helps me to use those.
But you aren't educated on any of the new police practices that are in place.
No, I'm not.
Thank you. No further questions, Your Honor. I do object to the entering of Blake Van Owen as an expert in crime scene reconstruction, as well as police practices. I object to crime scene reconstruction because they haven't testified to any formal education in crime scene reconstruction or any training in this area. I also object to the police practices because Miss Van Owen has testified that she was only a police officer for 9 months, and that was 8 years ago, and that she hasn't received any new training after the fact.
Ms. Medina, any response?
Yes, Your Honor. According to Rule 702, admission is based on one of any of the 5 categories: knowledge, skill, experience, training, as well as education. Professor Van Owen has testified to her education for her master's degree in criminal justice, as well as her training for 9 months in the police force. She's also testified to her experience in testing over 100 cases involving all 3 of these areas of expertise, including her experience in her jobs working as I'm sorry, I do believe I'm cutting out. She has testified to her experience in her experience in her teaching at the college.
I am so sorry, Your Honor. I don't know if it's just on my end. I'm unable to hear opposing counsel.
Right, I was hoping that we might get her back in. Ms. Medina, I didn't hear most of that argument. I'm not sure if you're still with us or if you're frozen. Maybe you could.
We have, oh, my apologies, Your Honor. We have an additional computer that we're running to her right now that will hopefully connect better to the
Great.
internet.
Yeah, let's take a minute and then we'll rehear that 702 argument.
Your Honor, are you all able to hear and see me now?
Yes.
Wonderful. Is it all right if I continue with my response?
That'd be great.
Thank you. Under Rule 702, an expert may be admitted if they qualify in any of one of the 5 categories: knowledge, experience, training, skill, or expertise. Ms. Van Owen has testified to her experience in testifying in over 100 cases involving all 3 of the areas of expertise. In addition, she has testified to her education with a master's degree in criminal justice, her training in the police academy, as well as her previous experience in jobs working as a resource officer and school security guard. Due to all of this information, we do believe that Professor Van Owen is qualified to testify in all 3 areas of expertise pertinent to Rule 702.
Your
Thank
Honor,
you.
may I respond?
Sure. Briefly, please.
Although Ms. Van Owen has testified to education with the police force, that was clarified to be 8 years ago, and although she does have a master's in criminal justice, she has not testified to any training in crime scene reconstruction, so I ask that it be limited to only one expertise.
Thank you, Ms. Thompson. I am going to qualify Professor Van Owen in police practices, crime scene reconstruction, and forensic evidence as an expert.
Thank you. May I continue, Your Honor?
Yes, please.
Wonderful. Professor Van Owen, how did you come to be involved in this case?
Oh, I was hired by the defense because there was concern that the police investigation was sloppy, it being mishandled.
And once you were hired, what activities did you conduct?
Well, I reviewed the police reports and crime scene reconstruction conducted by Kyle Kuzak, as well as the cell tower reports and exhibits prepared by Detective Markowitz. Additionally, I've conducted my own partial investigation in areas I feel were neglected by the prior investigation.
Let's talk about the police's efforts to investigate, my apologies. What did you notice?
Well, I noticed there was many inconsistencies with the first investigation, such as the alleged murder weapon, scene of the crime, and clues that could have helped us reach a more concrete conclusion.
Can you describe your crime scene reconstruction?
Yes, I reconstructed the crime scene and analyzed how the murder of Mr. Brackman would have played out.
And what did you determine about the appearance of the intruder?
Well, the video showed that the intruder's build could not have been much larger than Mr. Brackman himself.
And in your investigation, you addressed the alleged murder weapon. What caught your attention about this murder weapon?
I noticed that the knife used is a completely different brand and style than those in the knife block. And also, the formation of the handle would have caused someone to hold it in a very specific way.
And what did this suggest to you?
This suggests that Mr. Brackman was stabbed from behind, as that would completely line up with the stab wound. Also, this evidence suggests that this was not a spontaneous attack, but more in line with a premeditated murder.
I'd like to talk about the alleged scuffle in this crime scene. How does this connect to the crime?
While the marks at the scene could signify a struggle, you can't carbon date scuff marks to see how old they are. These marks could have been made years before the incident.
Did you notice anything else?
Yes, I noticed that there's a Ring camera Mr. Brackman owned.
And what did you conclude about this Ring camera?
While he did own a Ring camera, we don't know if he had notifications for the camera setup at all.
Do we know if Mr.
Objection, Your Honor.
What are the grounds, Ms. Thompson?
To 5.1.2, it appears that the witness is reading off of some sort of affidavit or notes, and that is against the rule of competition. And I just wanted to clarify that they are not.
Okay. Ms. Medina.
The witness is currently in a separate room, but I do believe all of the information they have in front of them is their computer as well as the case file.
Can you inquire of, well, I'll just do it. Professor Van Owen, are you reading from notes?
No, I'm not.
All right, thank you. Proceed, Ms. Medina.
Would you like me to re-ask the question, Professor Van Owen?
Yes, I would.
Do we know if Mr. Brackman had his phone on his person at the time?
No, we do not.
And why don't we know this?
Well, he did have a camera. We weren't sure if he had his phone on him at all. And even if he had his phone, if the notifications were turned on.
And in your expert opinion, what do you think happened on the day of Mr. Brackman's murder?
I believe that the intruder came in with the intent to kill Mr. Brackman, and Mr. Brackman was stabbed from behind.
And in your expert opinion on police practices, do you believe that the prosecution's police investigation was conducted properly?
No, not at all. I believe that the investigation was done very sloppily and poorly.
Thank you. In your investigation, did you find any other suspects for the murder?
Yes, I did.
And what were those suspects?
I believe Blair Rowlands.
Why did Blair Rowlands catch your attention?
I'm sorry, you're cutting up. Can you please repeat that?
Of course. Why did Blair Rowlands catch your attention as a suspect?
Oh, well, Blair Rowlands' father, Jonathan Rowlands, had been represented by Mr. Brackman before the murder, and he had been convicted.
And what happened to Jonathan Rowlands?
He was sent to prison.
Did Jonathan Rowlands express anything to Mr. Brackman?
He had a declaration of revenge.
And how did you know that Jonathan Rowlands declared revenge?
There was an audio recording from the court proceeding that I had listened to.
I'd now like to direct your attention to what has been marked as Exhibit 22. Do you have this in front of you?
Yes, I do.
What is this?
This is court proceeding of Jonathan Rowlands.
Is this a fair and accurate representation of the link to the recording?
Yes, it is.
Your Honor, at this time, the defense moves to have Exhibit 22 admitted into evidence.
Ms. Thompson, any objection?
Yes, Your Honor. I object to Rule 901 as well as 801. Would you like me to explain my objection?
Yes, please.
Rule 901 is about authentication. We have no proof nor evidence backing up the fact that this is Jonathan Rollins speaking, besides the word of Miss Van Owen, and she hasn't provided any evidence for the court today, as well as Rule 801 hearsay. We have no proof that this statement is true and accurate.
May I
Ms.
respond?
Medina.
Thank you. Would you like me to address both objections at once or one at a time?
Let's start with 901.
Perfect. Under Rule 901B, Section 5, an opinion on a voice, whether heard firsthand or through mechanical or electronic transmission or recording, based on hearing the voice at any time under circumstances that connect it with the alleged speaker. Professor Van Owen has testified that Jonathan Rollins had been identified earlier in the recording and can verify that this is his voice.
Okay, I don't believe that this was being offered based upon hearing, right?
Under Rule 901?
Right.
If opposing counsel would like to clarify the exact objection they're referring to, it would be greatly appreciated.
Yes, so under Rule 901, authenticating evidence, there has been, again, no proof saying that this is Jonathan Rollins, and in the recording, it doesn't specifically say that Jonathan Rollins is saying this, as well as the exception to hearsay doesn't fit the current statement.
Your Honor, we have not addressed the objection to hearsay as of yet. This is about the objection under Rule 901.
I agree. And so I'm going to overrule the objection to 901. Go on to the hearsay exception.
Thank you. Under Rule 8033, this is a statement of the declarant's state of mind as well as a motive to seek revenge against Mackenzie Brackman.
All right, I'm going to overrule the objection.
Thank you. May I continue?
Yes.
Permission for co-counsel to publish Exhibit 22 to the jury?
Granted.
I'll get you back, Brackman, if it's the last thing I do.
Professor Van Owen, what did we just hear?
This is Jonathan Rollins at his trial.
And how do you know that this is Jonathan Rollins?
Well, I had listened to the entire case before, and Jonathan Rollins identifies himself.
And what did this recording tell you?
Well, this recording shows that Jonathan had declared his express for revenge.
And how would this have affected Blair, his child?
Well, Blair was in the courtroom at the same time, meaning they would have heard their father's wish.
And how do you know that Blair was in the courtroom at this time?
They spoke on behalf of their father earlier in the trial.
And what other observations did you make about Blair Rollins?
Well, Blair Rollins was missing from school at the time of the murder. They also matched the build of the intruder, and they had a possible motive to kill Brackman.
Why do you believe—
Objection, Your Honor, lack of foundation.
Ms. Medina.
Yes, Your Honor, the witness has been qualified as an expert in police practices, forensic evidence, and crime scene reconstruction, meaning they have the expertise to analyze the evidence of the case, which includes suspects such as Blair Rollins and motive.
I'm going to sustain the objection. You could just lay a little bit more foundation about that background.
Of course. Has Blair Rollins been listed as a suspect in this case?
Yes, she has.
Has Blair Rollins been investigated by the prosecution as well?
No, she has not.
And why do you believe Blair Rollins should have been investigated?
Well, seeing as she has a motive and was missing from the day of the crime, it seems like a pretty good reason to investigate her.
Objection, Your Honor. I still object to lack of foundation because Ms. Van Owen hasn't provided any evidence about Blair Rollins being missing from school, and we are only taking her at her word.
I'm going to overrule the objection.
I will move on to the next question. Professor Van Owen, in your expert opinion, who killed Mackenzie Brackman?
I can't say for sure because the prosecution had failed to collect enough evidence, but most of the evidence points to Blair Rollins.
Professor Van Owen, In your expert opinion, do you know who did not kill Mackenzie Breckman?
While the evidence points to Blair Rowland, it points directly away from Avery Becker.
Thank you. Your Honor, I have no further questions at this time.
Thank you. Any cross-examination?
Yes, Your Honor. Good evening, Ms. Van Owen.
Good evening.
We're going to talk a little bit about your work experience first. So as we've previously talked about, just to clarify, you've only had 9 months of experience in the police department. Is that correct?
As I said before, yes, and that I've also used my recent experience to help broaden that horizon.
And after your 9 months, you quit your job.
That is true.
So then you decided to be a CSR.
Yes, I thought that my experience could help.
And then you decided to be a mall cop.
Objection, Your Honor.
Yes, with my experience.
Ms. Medina, what's your objection?
Under relevance.
Ms. Thompson?
Your Honor, relevance is a very low bar. I'm establishing Ms. Van Owen's work history to go into my line of questioning about how she investigated this case.
May I respond?
Okay. I'm going to give a little bit of leeway, but she has been qualified previously. So let's wrap that up.
Okay. Thank you, Your Honor. Ms. Van Owen, we're going to move on from here. You said that you performed a partial investigation. Is that correct?
That is correct. That wasn't my job, but I felt it was necessary.
And in this partial investigation, you investigated other suspects?
That is correct, yes.
In particular, Blair Rollins?
She seemed highly suspicious and a lot of evidence pointed towards her, so yes.
And since you believe that Blair Rollins committed this crime, you had an interview with Blair Rollins?
That is correct, yes.
You had an interview with Blair Rollins?
Objection, Your Honor. Assuming facts, not in evidence.
Ms. Thompson?
Your Honor, as Ms. Van Owen can either confirm or deny this, she can either say what I am saying is true or false, and it is a yes or no question.
Overruled.
Ms. Van Owen, you said that you performed an interview with Blair Rollins?
That it was necessary.
You wrote an affidavit in this case?
That is correct, yes.
And in it you put all true and relevant facts?
That is correct, yes.
And if I could ask the timekeeper to stop time while we try and pull up the affidavit. Ms. Van Owen, nowhere in your affidavit do you state that you had an interview with your suspect, Blair Rollins.
I'm sorry, I must have been confused. I thought you had said a different person than Blair Rowlands.
But just to clarify, your prior testimony was that you had an interview with Blair Rollins.
I did not put in my affidavit that I had interviewed Blair Rowlands, so no.
But your prior testimony was that you had an interview with Blair Rollins.
Yes, sorry, I was confused. I thought you were talking about a different person.
And just to be clear, you never had an interview with Blair Rollins?
I never did.
Co-counsel can stop screen sharing at this time. So you were never able to collect Blair Rollins' cell phone records, were you?
That is correct. That was not my job. That was the prosecution's job.
But again, your key suspect, you were never able to collect their cell phone records.
Again, that was not my job. That was the police's job.
A simple yes or no will do. You were never able to collect the cell phone.
Sustained.
I will move on. Miss Van Owen, you don't know where Blair Rollins was on the day of March 6th.
That is correct.
And you were never able to find if she was at or near Mackenzie Breckman's house.
Again, that wasn't my job, that was the prosecution's job, so no, I was not able to.
We're going to talk a little bit more about your investigation. Through your partial investigation, you identified what you believe to be the holes in the prosecution's case.
That is correct, this case was done sloppily.
My apologies, Your Honor. I am in a room with motion-activated lights. If I could have just a couple minutes to turn the lights back on, I'd be very grateful.
That's fine.
Thank you very much.
Proceed, Ms. Thompson.
Thank you. So, Ms. Van Owen, you know Kyle Kuzak professionally, is that correct?
That's correct, I've worked with them before and I've seen their process of work.
And you believe that they're egotistical.
Yes, they can be.
And you're here today testifying what you believe to be the faults in their case, or in their investigative work.
Yes, I've seen their work before.
You're aware that Kyle Kuzak has 19 years of experience?
That is correct.
And you're aware that you do not have any experience in crime scene reconstruction?
Objection, Your Honor. Relevance. The witness has already been accepted as an expert.
Ms. Thompson.
I am just clarifying that they are testifying on the fact of Kyle Kuzak's work and how they believe to be the faults in it through their crime scene reconstruction experience.
I'm going to overrule the objection.
Ms. Van Owen, you're aware that you don't have any formal experience in crime scene reconstruction.
Besides having a master's degree and working in fields with those experience and requirements.
But you don't have a master's degree in crime scene reconstruction, just to clarify.
That is correct. I don't have a master's degree in crime scene reconstruction.
We're going to talk a little bit more about your investigation. You didn't collect any evidence for your investigation.
Again, that was not my job. It was the prosecution's job to collect evidence.
So that was a no, you didn't collect any evidence.
No, I did not.
The only evidence that you were able to use was what the prosecution gave you.
That is correct. It was the prosecution's job to collect and gather evidence.
But you didn't think it was important for your partial investigation to collect evidence.
Again, it was not my job to collect evidence. Me collecting evidence was my own doing.
But just to clarify, you did not think it was important to collect evidence.
Again, it was not my job to collect evidence. My job was only to examine the case.
Thank you, Your Honor. No further questions.
Redirect?
No redirect, Your Honor. And at this time, the defense rests its case.
All right. Let's go to closing arguments.
Your Honor, before I begin, the prosecution asked to reserve any remaining time for rebuttal.
Granted.
May I proceed?
Please.
Get out, get in, get even. Ladies and gentlemen, today you heard the story of Mackenzie Brackman. Mackenzie Brackman was a beloved local defense attorney, devoted member of the community, and local mock trial coach for Colorado High School. Mackenzie Brackman would spend his days tirelessly working to defend people who some others might not even give a second look to. After spending his days defending these people, he donated his free time to coach the Colorado High School mock trial team. He believed in each and every one of these kids and saw their true potential. But ladies and gentlemen, as you saw today, not all of the kids appreciated Mackenzie Brackman as their coach. Avery Becker did not appreciate Mackenzie Brackman as her coach and even went as far as to vandalize his car. Ladies and gentlemen, today you heard the story of how Avery Becker was told to get out of mock trial and out of Mr. Brackman's life. You were shown how Avery Becker got into Mr. Brackman's house through the ring videos and cell tower data. And finally, you were shown how Avery Becker got even through trashing Mr. Brackman's house, which resulted in his death. The prosecution called 3 witnesses today. The prosecution called Detective Jordan Markowitz, Kyle Kuzak, and finally, Alex Cifuentes. Detective Jordan Markowitz and Kyle Kuzak showed us that Avery Becker got in to Mr. Brackman's house through the ring videos and the cell tower data. Alex Cifuentes told us how Avery Becker was told to get out of mock trial and out of Mr. Brackman's life. Alex Cifuentes also told us about the communication between her and Avery Becker, where Avery Becker told her that she was going to get in to Mr. Brackman's house and get even by trashing it. The defense also called 3 witnesses today. The defense called Taylor Perkins, Blake Van Owen, and Avery Becker. Blake Van Owen is getting paid hundreds of dollars to be here today, ladies and gentlemen. And let me remind you, he has only ever testified for defense. Taylor Perkins is Avery Becker's best friend, and as you heard today, she would do anything for Avery Becker. Avery Becker is only here to save herself, ladies and gentlemen. That's all she's here for. Ladies and gentlemen, today we told you the story of how Avery Becker was told to get out of mock trial and out of Mr. Brackman's life. We showed you how Avery Becker got in to Mr. Brackman's house. And finally, we showed you how Avery Becker got even by trashing in Mr. Brackman's house, which resulted in his death. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Chamberlain. Defense closing arguments.
Yes, Your Honor. Sorry, I would like for the court to clarify if they can hear and see me correctly.
I can, thank you.
All right. Members of the jury, you are here today to decide the fate of Avery Becker. The prosecution would like you to believe that they have proven beyond a reasonable doubt that she is guilty. They have not. Throughout the course of this trial, we have shown you that their investigation was sloppy, their evidence selective, and their case circumstantial. You heard from Detective Markowitz and Kyle Kuzak, who came to their conclusion that Miss Becker did in fact kill Mr. Brackman using limited evidence and sloppy technique. By all accounts, they seem to have decided that Miss Becker was the culprit before ever looking into evidence for her guilt. If they hadn't, they would have seen that other avenues should have been explored. They conducted a case that relied on, they conducted a case that relied on texts that could have easily been doctored, a lost phone in the general area of Mr. Brackman's house, and a video of somebody with a vaguely similar height and build. Much of their other evidence of the scene was irreparably damaged, casting further doubt on the investigation. To see just how mishandled this case was, one must look no further than the suspect never investigated. Blair Rollins, a student with a grudge against Mr. Brackman for putting her father in prison for life, who just so happens to be of the same height and build as Avery Becker, was not at school on the day of the murder, would have taken the same route as Miss Becker to get to Mr. Brackman's house, and has since disappeared. However, the prosecution simply decided not to investigate this possibility, which isn't only worrying, but cast doubt on the entire investigation. If they simply ignored the indications pointing towards Ms. Rollins, what else could they have missed? You then heard from expert witness Blake Van Owen, who further highlighted the rushed nature of the investigation and the flawed logic in the police's reconstruction of the scene. Her appraisal of the knife used to murder Mr. Brackman and of the alleged scuffle at the crime scene only cement the impression of an investigation that missed critical facets. She reminds us that the evidence doesn't point to anybody concretely, let alone the defendant. You then heard from Avery Becker herself and her best friend, Taylor Perkins, who let us in on what the prosecution is trying to claim to be the motive. The petty drama of a high school club. Well, Miss Becker and Mr. Brackman didn't always see eye to eye. The leap from frustrations to burglary and murder is a hard one to make. They also recount the details of where they were that day, looking for a lost phone. A story that is soundly supported by the cell data records that the prosecution's own detective Markowitz produced. Their testimony only proves what the prosecution should have known all along. Avery's alibi is solid. Her motive is questionable at best. And the only evidence linking her to the scene of the crime is a video of somebody with a generally similar height and build, a lost phone in the vague area of Mr. Brackman's house, and texts that nobody other than Alex Cifuentes, who never liked Avery, has ever seen. But then the question becomes, how did Mr. Brackman die? Could it have been at the hands of Blair Rollins, revenge for a father's life sentence? We don't know. Could it have been a setup by Alex Cifuentes to get rid of a longtime rival? We don't know. Could it have just been a tragic accident, the result of a random home invasion gone wrong? We don't know. And there is a reason for that. Because this case was gravely mishandled, the blame for this crime is being laid on the wrong person, and true justice may never be found. The prosecution must prove, beyond a reasonable doubt, that Avery Becker killed Mackenzie Brackman. They have not done this. The case for Avery's guilt is circumstantial. The evidence for Avery's guilt is selective, and the investigation into it was sloppy and rushed. For a conviction, the questions of Alex Cifuentes and Blair Rollins, of the lost phone and the missing texts, must be answered. And failing to do so, the prosecution has also failed to meet the burden of beyond a reasonable doubt. The only thing more tragic than the death of Mackenzie Brackman would be to send one of his own students to prison for a crime that she didn't commit. And for that reason, we ask you to declare the defendant, Avery Becker, not guilty. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Farrell. Ms. Chamberlain, any rebuttal?
Yes. May I proceed?
Yes.
Ladies and gentlemen, Blake Van Owen performed a partial and sloppy investigation of today's case because he didn't even find his one person he thought did it, Blair Rollins. The defense keeps testifying that the prosecution has a circumstantial case, as they themselves have a circumstantial case against Blair Rollins. Ladies and gentlemen, as you heard today, Taylor and Avery would do anything for each other, including lie. Ladies and gentlemen, today the prosecution has proved that Avery Becker was the one in Mr. Brackman's home through the ring videos and the cell tower data, placing Avery Becker there. Avery Becker was told to get out of mock trial and out of Mr. Brackman's life. Avery got into Mr. Brackman's house, and Avery Becker got even through trashing Mr. Brackman's house, which resulted in his death. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Chamberlain. And thank you, counsel. I think we're concluded today. And I think the scoring judges are still going to take some time to tally scores. And then we'll have critiques when those scores are permitted.
And if we can have our scorers turn on their cameras once they have submitted everything.
Trying to do that.
I've already gotten the confirmation that we are good, so you can move ahead with feedback.
Great. I'll just say generally that that was fantastic. If everybody could turn their cameras on so we can see you. Phenomenal job. And that's all I really get to say. The judge doesn't get to say anything, but the scoring judges do. So I'll let you guys go for it.
I can't get my camera to go on. Or Well, this is Brenda. Now I can't get my camera to go on, but I thought everything went really well. Everybody seemed to be well prepared and knew their facts and stories and had the right information. The only problem I had was sometimes they were talking too fast, and so it was hard to kind of keep up. But other than that, I thought they were doing really well with their enunciation and the use of their hands was really great, and their expressiveness. So I really enjoyed it.
Yeah.
So it was fun. Like
Thank
watching
you.
a movie.
This is Sue. You guys were so good with your understanding of the rules of evidence. And I saw such a good flow with the objections. I thought you all did a really, really good job. This is my 4th or 5th round, and this was the closest round I've ever judged. You all did a great job. I particularly enjoyed how so many of the witnesses owned the content, owned the performance. It really made a difference in watching it. So the lawyers were also very good, but I saw just exceptional performance from the witnesses. So kudos to all of you.
Hi, I'd just like to reiterate what the scoring panelists have said so far. You guys did an amazing job and should be very proud of yourselves. Everyone held themselves very well, and I gave a professionalism score was great for both of you, not to name the scores or anything, but I think that both parties were very professional. The defense, you did a good job at impeaching the witnesses from the other side. And with the prosecution, I liked your get in, get out, and get even. That was a great theme to kind of hold throughout the trial. And so just great job and keep it up.
Yeah, I agree with everyone else. I thought everyone did a really great job. I think this is the third or fourth round of this mock trial pattern, I guess, that I've seen, and it's really interesting to see all the different witnesses, how they kind of create their own character for the witness, and I really enjoyed your version of all of those. I thought that was great. The attorneys, your questions for the cross, they were crisp and succinct, and you did a good job of not leaving too much room for them to kind of take off in their own kind of direction and just get the answers and control that. And yeah, I thought overall everyone did really great and very impressed with you all. So congrats and good job.
Good luck.
Yeah, take care. Good luck, everybody. It was fantastic. You should be very proud.
Thank you, Your Honor.
You.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.